Hello everybody, Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report, Monday's edition, broadcasting from beautiful Irvine, California. Happy to have you with us today after a nice long holiday weekend. I hope you and your family had a great Thanksgiving, and we look forward now to December and the Christmas holiday season. So folks, a lot of news over the weekend, and we're going to bring you up to speed on everything, the facts, the fiction. But first, let's get started with what I call the media hysteria. Okay, the World Health Organization came out and said we have a new COVID variant, and they're calling it Omicron as part of the Greek alphabet. You notice conspicuously they basically glossed over new and Xi. Why? Well, they didn't want to cause people confusion with new, and of course Xi is the Chinese Communist Party leader, Xi Jinping. It's in his name. So obviously they didn't want to offend the Chinese. Needless to say, okay, we have a new COVID variant. Now let's talk about this for a little bit. Boy, you could not get away from Dr. Fauci and the mainstream media over the weekend. And, you know, folks, the doctors in South Africa are still learning about this variant. The initial reports came out and said it causes mild symptoms. But again, it's what we call too new to understand. It's too new to rate. It is spreading. And, you know, we're just going to have to learn more about it. So a lot of people were saying, let's not jump to conclusions here. And to President Biden's credit, when he gave his news conference earlier today, he basically said it's cause for concern, but it's not a cause for panic. And, you know, as we've told you, when the president does something appropriate, we're going to applaud him for it. When he does something inappropriate, we'll call him out. But in this case, I think he delivered the right message. You know, you've got the mainstream media out there trying to protect the president from his low approval ratings. And, you know, it was sort of predictable on the Sunday shows. Mass hysteria about the new variant. And again, we knew there would be other variants. This is not a surprise. But again, it sort of goes against the narrative that Biden really has his arms around COVID, which we all know is not true. But again, they are putting forth their best effort. We wish them much success. However, you know, a lot of countries around the world are sort of starting to panic on this. Japan closes their borders. And speaking of closing borders, when President Trump was in office when the pandemic first hit, and he made the decision to basically a travel ban with China, well, he got lambasted as, you know, xenophobic, you know, homophobic, you name it. But basically xenophobia. And now President Biden is limiting the scope of travel to and from 8 South African countries. I mean, you can still travel, but there's certain restrictions in place. You don't hear a peep out of the media. Why? Well, because it's probably the right policy. Just as Trump did the right thing when he was in office, when it was clear that the initial virus came from China, and he imposed a Chinese travel ban. Got lambasted for it. Well, I guess the mainstream media have learned, hey, this thing is originated out of South Africa. It's spread to England, Israel, a handful of other countries. It's likely here in the U.S. now. We don't know that for certain. But I did listen to Dr. Fauci over the weekend. And Fauci made a pretty astounding comment. You know, we've been told, really forgotten, going on a year and a half now, that the goal was, you know, to eradicate COVID. Well, Fauci came out over the weekend and he said, we're never going to eradicate this disease. That was a startling announcement. It didn't get a whole lot of headlines, but basically Fauci came out and said we're going to have to learn how to live with COVID. It's a startling reality that Democrats who have been pushing COVID zero, that we're eventually going to get to zero if we all mask up permanently and we all get shots. And again, that narrative just fell apart over the weekend when Dr. Fauci said that this isn't going to happen. We're going to have to learn how to live with it. Most people have been already come to that conclusion months, if not a year ago. But the efforts put forth, particularly by left-wing Democrats about lockdowns, well, the president came out today and said we're not going to have additional lockdowns, no plans for that, And it looks like they're going to emphasize vaccinations and booster shots, which, in this commentator's opinion, is fine. So, again, the media panics. Fortunately, the Biden administration did not, because had the Biden administration panicked and acted like the way the media did over the weekend, people would listen to them and you would see people panicking. But that didn't happen. So that's the good news. But this idea that we're going to get to COVID zero, that there's going to be an elixir and a magic bullet found, it's not going to happen, folks. The interesting thing is, and again, we're not doctors, we don't want to play one here, but as the vaccination rates continue to go up in this country, by definition, as more people do get vaccinated, we're noticing that the levels, we're still having relatively high levels despite the increase in vaccinations of cases, still hospitalizations, but it does seem to be being managed better than obviously in the past, and obviously we've learned some things from it. So again, best advice we can give you is, stay safe, try to follow the guidelines as best you can, and live your life. And that appears to be what's happening all across the country. So if we get to a point where, between either natural immunity from people that have had the vaccine or the vaccine rates continue to go up, I think that's the message Fauci was giving us when he said, well, eventually we're going to have to learn how to live with this, which is a stark change from what their policies used to be. All right, look, Democrats are facing some pretty severe backlash here over these no bail policies that they're advocating. In these deep blue cities, and again, we saw examples of this even over the weekend. We had a guy in New York City committed 3 crimes in 36 hours, arrested 3 times, and because they have no cash bail in New York, the guy got out all 3 times. I mean, folks, this is not going over real well. And who is it affecting? It's affecting the people that live in these deep blue cities, because they're the ones that are abdicating their responsibility and trying to implement these no cash bail laws, and they're using, the false analogy that, hey, if you have bail and it's cash bail, it affects poor people. Well, to some degree that may be true, but to have no bail in place and to let criminals just go through a revolving door, that's never going to work. And the people that are seeing the most effect on that are people that live in these deep blue cities. And guess what, folks? They're tired of it. I mean, we hate to rattle statistics on the show, but my goodness, when you see news come out about these murder rates that are happening, I'm going to give you these numbers just to, it's a little crazy. Homicides in Philadelphia now past 500 over the weekend. That's already the highest recorded in Philadelphia since 1990. Chicago, 738 people killed this year. Baltimore, 308. Washington, D.C. at its highest level since 2003. I mean, folks, these are really bad numbers. And, a lot of people are saying, well, we got to blame the gun. No, I don't blame the gun. Blame the shooter. That's a person who committed the homicide. So you're seeing continued spike in these deep blue city homicide rates, and a new phenomenon that hit the United States really over the past few weeks, these smash and grab robberies where gangs, anywhere from 5 to 40 people, with their hoods on and their, gear, going into these department stores and grabbing merchandise and just running out with it. Large groups, vandalizing stores, looting stores. It's becoming a problem for major retailers in this country. Now, we've heard of some crazy stuff going on, but New York City, oh my goodness. Folks, did you catch this one? In New York City, I couldn't believe when I read the story. They're actually paying young criminals now on a test program $1,000 a month so they won't be criminals. Yeah, you heard that right. A test case to pay people $1,000 a month, young criminals, so they won't commit crimes. They're basically bribing them not to commit a crime. I've heard a lot of insane stuff out of deep blue liberal New York, but boy, I got to tell you, folks, this one even has liberals scratching their head. We'll see how the program works and we'll report back to you, but my goodness. I mean, did you ever think you'd see the day that we're paying criminals not to be criminals? Add that on top of the no bail, and oh boy. Eric Adams has his work cut out for him as New York City's mayor. We wish him all the best, but boy, I got to tell you, that's a little crazy. Having these mobs vandalizing these stores, boy, there's already enough problems in our economy that you would think that, something could be done about that, and hopefully it will soon. But this is a new phenomenon, and it's happening. And it's like anything else, when you increase security costs, which is going to happen, boy, I don't know. Again, it's going to be tough on some of these retailers because we're asking people to go back to the stores, and yet if people are going to be hit by flash mobs, I'm not so certain that they're going to do that. That may lead to more online e-commerce business and less for the in-foot retailers. We'll see. We'll keep an eye on it for you. Look, we had some really good news over the weekend, too. I don't want to tell you things are tough. We know they're tough. But listen, the good news is almost 2.5 million Americans flew on Sunday, returning from their Thanksgiving weekend. That's great news, folks, for people, for particularly the airline industry, the travel industry that was so beaten down by the COVID lockdowns over the past year and a half. So that's good news for our economy because those people spend money. It goes through the economy, helps airlines, helps hotels, helps travel, and that's a big part of our economy. So that was some good news. I mean, we like sharing that. The stock market took a big hit on Friday over the concerns about the new COVID variant. Well, maybe those concerns are short-lived because the market has rebounded sharply. The NASDAQ and the Dow are each up about 300 points as of when we came on the air. So good things happening in the market on a rebound today. And maybe that came on the heels of the president saying there weren't going to be lockdowns, because I think a lot of people feared, oh my God, we're going back to lockdowns again with this new variant, as some countries are doing. But no, in this case, the administration kept a level head and they realized, oh my God, we cannot do this. If we lock down the economy again, any prospect that they had in 2022 would be doomed. It's already precarious for them, but had they gone through with lockdowns, oh boy, that would have been a whole different story. But it's really interesting. The leftists and the left wing of the Democratic Party, they're starting to lose patience with Biden. With his approval ratings hovering now between 36 and 40%, and the Democratic Party really right now staring down the barrel of a debacle in election terms for 2022, you're starting to hear more and more liberal Democrats talk about the fact that, hey, if we have a blowout in 2022 and we're no longer controlling the House and the Senate, maybe it's time then that we consider abandoning Biden and looking for a left-wing candidate to run against him if Biden decides to run. Long way off, but it's okay for us to speculate on it right now, because if he decides that he's going to run and they lose control of the House and or Senate with the projections the way they are right now, basically that's the end of the Biden presidency. He'll get nothing through Congress other than his executive orders. And then everybody will become focused on 2024. So we'll keep an eye on it. We'll see what the smoke signals, what the tea leaves say. But it is interesting here. You're literally less than 1 year into the Biden administration, and I don't even think they imagined everything could be piling up the way it did. Everything from more COVID variants, inflation freaking people out, crime going through the roof, a border unprotected, supply chain problems, again, which we've fairly said are some related to the president's policies on oil, but not all, okay? So all these problems piling up, which leads to this 36 to 40% approval rating, and these numbers keep getting reaffirmed. So we'll keep an eye on that, because if you start sensing the old, we got blood in the water here, you'll see leftist Democrats, the one on the far left, they will abandon Biden because they'll perceive him as more of a centrist, even though most Democrats are centrist. Not the left-wingers, though. I'm talking about the 20-25% of the hard left. No, they'll abandon Biden, and then we'll see if it gets really messy at that point. But it's really interesting. They're out there pushing, now that everybody's going to be coming back from holiday, they'll be pushing the $1.75 trillion monstrosity, otherwise known as Build Back Better. Well, the blame game's already started on that. the media now is coming under criticism for not promoting the Biden agenda enough. Can you believe it, folks? We've been talking about it on this show for months. This is not a popular bill with the American public. They're already seeing us $29 to $30 trillion in debt. And the American public does not want all that social spending, particularly when we're coming up on a debt ceiling crisis again around the middle of December. According to the Treasury Secretary, December 15th-ish, on or about there, we're forecast to hit our debt ceiling cap. So what do Democrats do? Instead of trying to work with Republicans on resolution, no, they're not doing that. They want to push this Build Back Better monstrosity. And all its social spending and its taxes and they're even trying to stuff immigration reform in this thing. Well, try until the Senate parliamentarian kicks it out. And until Manchin and Sinema have their say. Schumer and the Democrats are trying to push this thing through before Christmas. Manchin has publicly stated he wants to wait till after the year to see how everything shakes out with inflation and if it comes down any. We haven't heard much from Sinema, but we know what some of her concerns are. So, what does the media do? Now the administration, again, they're blaming the media, and people are coming on all these shows asking, well, why is this agenda not popular? Well, it's because we in the media are not propagandized is the proper word, basically lying to you, the American people, about what's really in this bill. Because most Americans, they're working, they got kids to support, education of their kids, holidays. They're not paying attention to what's in a $1.75 trillion monstrosity bill that's going to be spent over an 8 to 10 year period. No. And by the way, depending upon the financial gimmicks, how they play it with the scoring, it could end up being a $4 trillion bill, but CBO hasn't scored it that way yet. So anyhow, we're going to keep an eye on this. You're going to see a lot of stuff in the news on this, but bear in mind, hopefully, Manchin and Sinema will hold to their guns and whittle this thing down or kill this bill, because this is a monstrosity that the United States, which is already $29 to $30 trillion in debt, we do not need this monstrosity of a bill. All right, now, having said that, let's talk about some social implications, folks, of a couple high-profile cases. Okay. You know the cases we're talking about, the Rittenhouse case, where it was ridiculed on the left and on social media. The Aubrey case was praised by all parties. Okay, now, when word came out that Kyle Rittenhouse wants to go to Arizona State University, and I've got to check my notes because I want to make sure I get these right. Numerous leftist organizations, folks, have come out, no, we do not want that white supremacist killer on our campus. Wait a second. He was found innocent of all charges. But no, folks, that's not good enough for the left. Let me give you some of these organizations so that you can see who I'm talking about. These organizations want Rittenhouse banned from campus. And these are some real winners. Okay, you can tell by the names, and I'll explain it. Students for Socialism. Now that's a group of winners right there. They advocate, they want to end capitalism. Boy, you really want to be aligned with that group, don't you? Bunch of leftist knuckleheads. Here's another one. And this is going to actually make you laugh. Students for Multicultural Solidarity. You got that right. Multicultural Solidarity. You know what their claim to fame is? They want a safe space on campus from white supremacists. That's right, you heard it. A safe space on campus from white supremacists. And if not that, here's another group of winners. Students for Justice for Palestine. Folks, you can't make this stuff up. It is insane what you're seeing happen here. Now, the good news is there are people with common sense on that campus, such as college Republicans, who have requested that these three organizations be suspended from the campus for leading a continued harassment effort against Kyle Rittenhouse. Good for the college Republicans at Arizona State. Arizona State's a fine university. It's a big school. We haven't heard any comment from the administration on this, quote, request yet. But it just goes to show you. Here we have the Rittenhouse verdict, innocent of all charges. And yet he gets hammered on the left. So much that these knuckleheads at these three organizations want to come out and attack him and get him off campus. But no, when the jury gets it right, as we said on both cases last week, we thought the jury got it right on both of them, okay? And we thought justice was served in both of them. But no, it's never good enough for these leftist folks, never good enough. So we're going to stay on top of what goes on at Arizona State, okay? And we'll see if Kyle Rittenhouse still pursues an on-campus education there. He's currently taking online classes. That's probably going to bug the leftists also, but we'll see. Okay, you know, a few minutes ago I talked about that debt ceiling. Mark your calendar, folks, December 15th, that's when it's coming up. Okay, but back to this social stuff here. All right, there's another trial that starts this week. Do you all remember the Jesse Smollett case from a few years ago? Well, he's the guy that basically went out and fabricated a story saying a bunch of Trump supporters and MAGA-wearing people assaulted him. Well, true to form, the left in this country, came out, supported Smollett, condemned white race, the usual stuff. Everybody's a white supremacist, this shouldn't happen, my God, how's this happening? Well, the story quickly fell apart. And in 2020, Smollett was actually indicted by a grand jury for false and misleading statements to the police. A grand jury indicted him. That's fellow citizens. So then his attorneys requested the case be dismissed in June last year. Judge said, no, not going to be dismissed. Now, the reality, folks, is while he's facing 4 counts, these are not felonies, these are misdemeanors. Maximum punishable by up to 3 years in prison. You'll hear that touted on left-wing social media sites. But the reality is, even if he's convicted, he's likely to get some type of probation, a fine, some minor penalty. But it's a high-profile case. And again, how many times do we tell you, do not jump to conclusions? Because most of the time, those initial conclusions are wrong. Same thing happened in this case. So that thing is going to trial. We'll keep an eye on it for you. In the big picture of things, the only reason this is even newsworthy is because it's Jesse Smollett. He's a famous actor, and because he fabricated the story. That's why this became a news event. So we'll see how it develops. But for right now, again, the predictable outcomes. The left is outraged. The media is not going to cover it. And we'll see how the case goes. So let's summarize things here, okay? A lot of Americans still concerned about the inflation front. That didn't really change. Prices are going up. It was a little more expensive this year on Thanksgiving, wasn't it? Well, we all experienced it. Out here in California, they see gas pushing $5.50, $6 in some places. That's insane. You saw more stories about, people coming across the border over the weekend. These crime stories. Now we got Omicron. Look, the president, he needs to make sure some things start going right, because if he doesn't, he's not going to turn around his poll numbers. But it was so interesting, folks. Again, we watch a lot of these media shows so that you don't have to. It's so interesting, though. When the news was bad, again, the media is shifting. Oh, this new variant's horrific. We're going to have to, oh my God, it's bad. Well, it's not as bad, hopefully. We won't know that for a couple weeks, though. But again, what does the media do every time the president's in trouble? They go to bat for him, of course. They drudged up the old, Trump did this and Trump did that, and we got a problem with Trump. No. Again, there's issues with the former president, but it's not newsworthy events right now. And the media trying to distract people away from the real problems going on to trying to blame everything on Trump. It's not going to work. People don't care about that anymore. The former president's raising a ton of money. He looks like he may run. We don't know. It got so bad, folks, they even had to troop out Michael Cohen, Trump's former lawyer. They brought him out, just got out of jail recently. And Cohen's complaining that he's the only one that went to jail on this deal. They bring him out on Meet the Press over the weekend. Now, why would you bring Michael Cohen on a show if you weren't trying to distract from Biden? The guy's a convicted criminal. He violated campaign finance laws. Did his time, and now he's out. Why is he on a major news show? I'll tell you why. Because they're trying to divert. They know we have a problem with the Omicron virus now, with COVID, the new variant. They know people are suffering from high gas and high inflation. They're seeing the crime statistics just like you're hearing them and seeing them. And God knows if they ever have a camera down at the border seeing the debacle going on down there with the smugglers and the drugs. Out of control, folks. And so what do? They drum up Trump. It's not going to work. Every indication that we're seeing continues to point to a wipeout in 2022. But things can change, folks. Politics is a long time. That's a long time from now. Okay? But we're going to keep an eye on it for you, and we're going to share this news as it happens. So, again, that's our summary of what happened over the weekend. Thank goodness a lot of you got to spend time with your family, watch some great football games over the weekend, and enjoy this greatest country in the world, the United States of America. Good things are going to happen, folks. We'll get through these variants. We'll get through these bad economic policies of Biden. Hopefully, oil prices, they released some of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. More oil is starting to be produced. And hopefully we can get some of these prices down. All right, that's it. That's a summary of everything with some commentary. We'll be back tomorrow on Tuesday. We're going to keep an eye on them. You stay safe out there, and we'll see you tomorrow. Have a good evening.